Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to our very first stream here at the Azure User Group Denmark. Good afternoon. Welcome to. Very excited to have you here. Oh, I'm getting some echoes here. Excuse me for a second. Denmark. Good afternoon. Welcome to. Very excited to have you here. There we go. That's what happens when when you're watching your own show in a different tab. Anyways, I'm back with you now, and again, this is our very first stream, so hopefully we will not have too many of these glitches. My name is Rasmus, as you can see on your screen. We are live here on YouTube, and in a second, Stefan will join us here on stage. This is the first of a series of the planned sessions. We will have 3 sessions here in June. Featuring the Dutch mafia of MEPs and hopefully some interesting topics. What I will say to you listening in today is it's really important that we capture your feedback. I will be sharing the survey link during the talk. You don't have to do the survey right away, but just do it before you leave. We ask, did you enjoy the show? Did you enjoy the platform, of course, but also what kind of topics you would see here when we return after the summer break with a new series of CloudTalks. So really keen to capture your feedback for today's sessions. So with that, I will welcome to the stage here Stefan. Stefan, you're on the stream. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Hello.
Hello. I'm sure you have an introduction to yourself in a second.
Yes.
But I just want to, before I let you go on, welcome you and thank you so much for joining this first experiment. It wasn't, I didn't tell you it was the first time when I invited you here. so thank you so much for taking time to present to the user today. With that, I'm actually ready to let the stage be yours. So let me just bring up your screen here.
Okay.
The presentation is streaming now. And with that, I'm just going to let the stage be all yours, and I will return for questions and answers at the end. So, Stefan, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. So, my talk, this is something I developed brand new, given some of the recent developments with regards to having workflow solutions in the cloud. And then predominantly, we're going to talk about building workflow solutions with Microsoft Azure and cloud. So I've been to Denmark a couple of times, even to the Intelligent Cloud Conference, so that's pretty cool. Today, I'm not in person, but you'll see me virtually, or at least, well, you see me later on, but I will talk to you virtually now. I work for Codit, so that's an integration company in Europe. So we have several offices, several countries, and predominantly we work with IoT integration, some on-prem stuff still with BizTalk Server and that kind of stuff. So. But I'm predominantly doing only Azure technology. So hence I called myself an Azure technology consultant. I'm a Microsoft MVP for 10 years now. First couple of years was integration, but the last couple of years I was moved to the Azure SKU. I write for InfoQ. For those who are not aware of it, it's a new site. It's global, available in multiple languages. It talks about several types of technology, programming languages, architectural paradigms, and even several cloud platforms. So I write about developments on the AWS, Google, and Microsoft Cloud. I'm also an organizer. I'm a part of the Azure user group, so I'm a board member there. It's Waser NL, organizer of a conference, so that's Azure Lowlands. We've done it in the beginning of the year, and I also write some service notes for the Ko-Fi platform, the provider of some integration or monitoring tools as well. And, doing all that stuff, being active in community, you see on the left-hand side, I'd also like to run. Still running, still training, but unfortunately due to COVID, there's not much half or full marathons I can run this year. So I have to wait probably soonly for next year. Okay, so what's this story going to be about? So I'm going to talk about, cloud workflow. Talk a bit about a concept of business process workflow, some of the offerings that Microsoft offers. I'll look a bit on the hood, under the engines for logic apps and functions. Some pricing, use case, customer stories, monitoring. What does the market say? The Forresters and the Gartners. Some takeaways and call to action. So this is kind of in a nutshell what my story will be all about. So first of all, what's a business process? So, there's multiple definitions for a lot of stuff. And even for a business process, you're like, okay, well, just look at the online encyclopedia, which is Wikipedia, and then you kind of see what's meant by a business process. And you probably deal with business processes yourself as well in your work. Maybe you deal with ordering, maybe it's onboarding of personnel, maybe it's sending out invoices. This could be multiple steps, but combined, you can see those as a kind of a business process. So it's a sequence of stuff you need to do to eventually come to some outcome or to a service or whatever. But usually it serves a particular business goal. And tied to business process, something like a workflow, right? So it's also about a procedure, about a movement going from A to B. So how do you get from, receiving an order to, putting it in a SaaS system, or the other way around, getting an invoice out to the customer itself. Could be multiple steps, could be kind of a workflow. And for that, workflow is a technology you might be familiar with from the days. With .NET, you had like a Windows Workflow Foundation, you had products like K2, might be other products. And basically the technology is like you execute certain steps, but then you automate those. And you get a library, you get some control flows, you get some statefulness. And for that, Microsoft kind of offers free technologies I like to delve into. So you got Power Automate, you got Azure Logic Apps, and you got durable functions. So just to make a distinction here, the Microsoft, or at least the Microsoft Cloud, which is the offering, Office 365, the Dynamics, the CRM, all that stuff is part of what's called the Microsoft Cloud. And you also find the Power Platform there. And within the Power Platform, you got something like Power Automate. So, and on the other end, you got like Microsoft Azure, which hosts kind of the technologies to also build workflows. And those are like Logic App and Azure Functions. So looking at the Power Platform itself, part of the Microsoft Cloud, you find multiple services you might be familiar with. You got Power BI, you got Power Apps, you got Power Automate, used to be called Flow, but it's now revamped to Power Automate, and you got some Power Virtual Agents, which are more to do with bots and that kind of stuff. And underneath, you got some connectors, portals, AI builders, and common data service that support basically the Power Platform. And you can do all kinds of stuff with let's say Power Automate. So you can do automation at scale. You can basically, because this is a no-code kind of platform, you can easily build simple services. You can even say, okay, something enters Dropbox, I want to have it moved to my OneDrive. Something, those simple things you can do. You can do some intelligent automation. So I'll talk about it more in length. And you can even put some security in place as well. And basically, this is more like a marketing slide, but it basically enables companies that have this digital transformation going. And this is more on the level of leveraging what's offered through Microsoft Cloud. So you can extend Office 365. You can automate some legacy application. I got an example for that. You might even build some of the departmental type of solutions within your company, or maybe even end-to-end solutions by itself. So that's on one the Microsoft Cloud, and on the other end, you got Microsoft Azure Platform, which is a huge platform with over 100 services, predominantly focused on IaaS and PaaS, and that's available. And within that, you find something like a Logic App, and Logic App enables you through its connectors to tie into all kind of other Azure services. What's available even on the Microsoft Cloud, so Dynamics, Salesforce, but also not Salesforce, but also other SaaS applications, and even through what's called an on-premise data gateway, you can connect to systems on-premise. So the on-premise data gateway is kind of a service which is around the relay. It's capability you find within the service, but basically outbound connection, which enables you to set up connectivity with cloud services like a Logic App and on-premise. And with Logic Apps, there's quite some scenarios you can think of. You can even support some of the messaging, data wrangling. You can do some B2B and EDI traffic within the cloud. You can do some hybrid enterprise integration. That's what it supports. It supports process automation. And you can even consume some of the cognitive services you find in Azure and make some kind of smart solution. And I'll talk a bit on one of the scenarios with regards to Logic Apps later on as well. And then you got durable functions. So that's another way. And this is like a way of codifying your workflow completely. So instead of using low or no code, you have these functions that also enables you to efficiently do some automation or even support some kind of process on the background if you want. There's some integration, flexible integration through bindings, what's called. So I'll talk about that concept as well. And if you're really the developer and you really like to love code, then you could be extremely productive in that area. And with durable task framework or durable functions, it's kind of an extension on the Azure functions. It's based on the durable task framework, leverages average storage, and I'll talk about that when I talk about under the hood. And it basically gives you the means to implement stateful workflow, but then as code. So that's what durable functions can offer you. So all kinds of workflows, but in different ways. You can build them with different audiences and different scenarios. So if you look at the, okay, how do you develop those kind of things, right? So let's look at IDE, so an integration development environment, development and DevOps kind of experience for those technologies. So Power Automate, this is completely what you can do in a browser. So hence you don't really need an IDE. And the concept is basically with any kind of workflow, you need to trigger it, and then it follows by a certain series of steps. So you got like a trigger, you get an action, and even you control the flow a bit. And you can do this from a browser. So if you log in through Microsoft Cloud, if you log in through Power Automate, and you have a Microsoft Cloud account, then you can start building these. And once you build up your flow, you can even simply click check, and then it will check your flow if it validates, and you can even test it real time kind of thing. So if you, for instance, this will, when an RSS feed is, when an RSS feed based on a certain address you have, has new items, then it will send you an email. So you see some of the runs. It's pretty abstracted away, as Power Automate basically depends on logic apps, and I'll talk about it in a second as well. And then eventually you get an email. So something you can do. And from an application lifecycle DevOps perspective, you can export those flows and store them, or at least unpack them locally, and then through Visual Studio or other means, or through GitHub tooling, push those to Azure DevOps, and then you can use pipelines to push them to multiple environments. So that's how that kind of works. Then you got logic apps, kind of similar, because Power Automate depends on logic apps, so it kind of runs on logic apps. Similar kind of thing, you can offer those workflows inside a browser, use a trigger, action, and then conditional flow, but you get some more control over things. So you even have something like a code behind view. I'll demonstrate that later on. And there's some other stuff that you can do. So you have way more control than within Power Automate. You still have control with how you build up your flow, but it's a lot of things you can do in the background. You can even also offer a logic apps within Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. And I'll mention that later on as well. But once you've built those, you can easily execute those. You can even submit those. You can expect those. You can really drill into what happens in each of these steps as well. Application lifecycle, like I already mentioned, you can offer those logic apps in Visual Studio or Visual Code or a browser. So you can, you have both kind of experience. And because it's integrated, or at least you can offer those also in Visual Studio, or you can download those logic apps locally, or even through the Cloud Explorer within Visual Studio. You can subsequently optimize those templates and even push them to source control, and then again using the CI/CD or Azure DevOps. And then you get durable functions. For this is something, although you could potentially build those in a browser, like even Azure Functions, I would not recommend it. You can straight away offer those durable functions in Visual Studio or Code. And then the concept is that you get the template, which is the orchestrated template, which consists of a client, which basically kicks off the orchestrator, and then you get one or multiple activities. And then again, it wouldn't surprise you if you use Visual Studio, you get something like test and debug capability right available to you. And then if you look at application lifecycle management, then you can offer those in Visual Studio, push them to Azure DevOps, and then release to production. So those are kind of a little bit of distinction. So one gears, please automate gears way much to the browser, while with durable functions, you're really into Visual Studio and using an IDE. So let's look at under the hood. So like I said, Power Automate basically depends on or runs on top of logic apps. So it's more that I like to explain, the runtime of logic apps. So it's a job scheduler based on the fact that once you build out your workflow, behind the scenes kind of a JSON markup, which is going to be built up and kind of sets a dependency graph. So you got a trigger and multiple actions, and this is the way it's built up. And it's based upon a domain-specific language. And then the other thing is that it's highly parallelized, so you can send multiple requests to logic apps, and then it will spin up multiple instances and execute those. So it's basically parallelization, not multi-threaded, but I'll come to that in a second. So if you look at the architecture itself, so this is really under the hood. This basically consists of a couple of components. So you got the logic app resource provider. So that basically reads the workflow definition and breaks it down into multiple tasks with certain dependencies, because that's how you mark it up. It's connection manager, which manages all the connections with the connectors you use with logic apps. There's a connector runtime, and basically it abstracts all those connectors within it. So it's an API abstraction, all these, basically connectors for logic app, but also Power Automate are basically all open API kind of, defined APIs, and then they completely encapsulate, and that's what you use. And there's also a connection manager, which has to do with credentials and token refreshment and stuff. So the way this works, let's just look at this logic app, right? So once you save this, you got your workflow definition. And this workflow definition is triggered through a message which enters the service bus. So that's a trigger task. It will subsequently run a new message, and then you got this workflow orchestrator, right? It will look at the workflow definition, see, okay, there's a for each, and then I have to do multiple SQL inserts. I can do this in parallelization. And once those are all done, then basically I complete the message, which you also see in that workflow, and then the workflow is complete. And as you can see, there's all kinds of tasks. So because it runs into all kinds of tasks, there's not really active thread management. Like this orchestrator, sees these tasks and the dependencies, and then it will just run those on, within an Azure data center. There's a part of it which is all, designated for the logic app runtime, and it will execute, and it executes them at least once. And if, somewhere of the hardware failure is, it will then say, okay, I'll distribute it to another machine where this task will then at least be executed once. And depending if you have some retry policies in place for certain actions, then it will even do some retries as well, depending on what type of issue it is. Okay, so logic apps on the top of Power Automate basically depends on this, kind of runtime. And as you can see, these are like, you're using Visual Design as a kind of a markup language with regards to logic apps. And this is way how you can automate your business processes, basically. But if you look at it from a developer perspective, it's more like, maybe you're not too familiar with, and maybe it's too much drag and drop. CI/CD, it's still that there's still a dependency with Visual Studio, and you have to do download or export and stuff. So it's a little bit less friendly, you might say. And if you look at, particularly unit testing, it's quite hard when it comes to logic apps and Power Automate. But then again, from a developer perspective, you're pretty much familiar with that. So you could see it, more like, okay, now I want to codify basically my workflow. And then basically you're using Azure Function Extension. Now, if you're familiar with Azure Functions, it basically, with functions, you can react on events. You can tie those in with what's called bindings. And bindings enables you, this does a lot of plumbing for you. So if you want to connect with storage or queues and stuff, then it's all done. And then basically, and when, a message enters a queue, then it basically triggers the code. The code you can offer in multiple kind of languages. And then it can push what's being processed onto multiple outputs. So it could be storage, queues, etc., or only storage maybe, or storage and Cosmos DB and a message to the service bus. That's all possible. And then you got this extension, which is the durable functions. So I'll talk a little bit under the hood how this works. So it's the durable task framework, and it leverages durable storage and messaging with regards to Azure storage. So we'll use table storage. It will use the queues under the hood as well. So basically, the durable task framework is tied into Azure storage. So that, and kind of around it sits a runtime extension, which is accessible through all kind of management APIs. And I'll show you that later as well with regards to a demo I have. And on top of that, you have these things like orchestrations, activities, and entities. Entities because it also supports the with actors and the roles and kind of things. And then you can run this into Azure itself, but even in Kubernetes or even on your local desktop. So that's all possible. So you can leverage this compute platform in multiple ways. If it's on a desktop, you use the storage emulator. So let's look at functional change. So you potentially already could support some kind of workflow when you tie functions together with queues in between. So one function does something, sends a message to a queue, and then the next one is being kicked off, etc. So you could do something like this, which simulates your workflow, but then through code. But then again, there are some problems if you do it this way, because the relationship between your functions and queues is not really that clear. Your operational context cannot, how do you capture this if you don't really have a database, unless you use kind of a database to store your state? All these queues could be, conceptual type of overhead, so you have to manage those as well. And, even if you want to apply some error handling out, this could be quite complex. So that's why, durable functions comes in, and this is how it looks, because you have this orchestrator function, which then subsequently has multiple activity functions. And because of the await, it's kind of, and you'll see this, you can do one, then you do the next, and then you do the other one. And then you completely chain those together and basically have your workflow in code. So how does this look behind the scenes, right? So this is kind of an animation. So this is from a slide deck from someone from Microsoft, Chris Gillum. But it really explains how it kind of works. So the client function is triggered and sends under the hood a message to the storage queue. Basically awakes the orchestrator, picking up the message and send it to another queue, basically task one of the activity it needs to schedule. So that's function, or at least activity F1. The orchestrator comes to sleep, so there's no consumption there. And then basically the activity comes to life and it will do something. It will return 42, right? So the task is complete. The orchestrator gets this message, interpret it like, okay, this F1 task is complete. Now I will send another message and I will deiterate, go to sleep. And then, and this is how the state's being considered, like event sourcing. The task F2 is being scheduled. It will process the F2, sends the results out, and then, that task is completed. So the orchestrator will get that message. And then it will know, okay, F1 is completed, F2 is completed. So now I'll send another message to kick off activity function F3, which will do something more, pick it up, knows that one is ready, the other one's ready, and the third activity function is ready. And then it knows, okay, I as an orchestration complete. So similarly to what you will see in the runtime of a logic app, where there's also this orchestrator kind of task, does something similar. It knows at the end, okay, everything's being executed according to a certain dependency. There's a dependency is pretty clear here, and then I'm done. Okay. So seeing this, so we talked a bit about development experience. We talked a bit, okay, what happens under the hood. And then, for all these technologies, there's different type of pricing and hosting. So Power Automate is completely, part of the Microsoft Cloud. So you're depending on the licensing or kind of the plans that are in place with your Microsoft Cloud licensing. So this is completely embedded in there. And that's also where it's basically executed, but then depending on, Power Automate depends on Logic Apps. So. And then you got Logic App pricing. So the pricing is per action, and action even includes a trigger, and then you got some standard and an enterprise connector. And with an enterprise connector, you have to think about an SAP connector. And this is something you can run in the cloud as a platform as a service capability, but you can also isolate down and having your own environment, which is called the integration service environment. Then you have a different kind of isolation, still under the hood. It's kind of the same process how this, Logic App execute, but then you have your own dedicated set of compute. So no noisy neighbor, anything, then it's all yourself. And then, of course, it has distance capability, but also a different type of pricing. And then if you look at durable functions, it's either a consumption plan, premium plan with VNet integration, or again, you can leverage an app service plan, which includes dedicated. So if you just do a function, pay as you go, using a consumption model with a certain set of memory and execution time, then let's say, 100 milli execution would be about $20. If you decide that you need something different, you want to leverage the premium, then it's, with pre-warmed instances and scaling, then the price will go up to, if you run it like 24/7, up to $300. And then even if you want to have your own isolated set of compute, because depending on the workloads you have, your pricing can even go up, depending on the type of instances you want to for your app service plan when you choose dedicated. Okay, so let's dive to talked about runtime pricing, how it works on a cover, what's available with, when it comes to building the workflows and integrate development environment. But what about some of the use cases capabilities? So what stands out within Power Automate is something that's called intelligent automation. So it's robotic process automation. It's kind of, you could, let's say, do something like screen scraping back in the days of mainframes, but then it's like other legacy applications that don't expose an API. Then you can automate those steps, record those, automate, and then play those back. So it's similar to what you see with something like Selenium. So Selenium kind of technology is baked in this as well. And what you record, then you could use within your flow. So you can kickstart it, when a record's created, then you could do something through the UI Power Automate connector. So what you would do is basically, in this case, you would launch a recorder, record your click steps, and then basically build up your flow. That's in a nutshell how it works. That's kind of a use case scenario, what you supported through Power Automate. So this is a demo from a friend of mine, Kent Weir, who works for the Power Automate product team. So basically what you'll see here pretty shortly is that there's a legacy application and it will scrape some of the prices within it, and it will subsequently put those into Excel. So it's completely automated. So there's a YouTube URL on the bottom of it. So I will share of course, my slide deck, but then you can really see the scenario itself. It's like a video of 25 minutes, I believe. So if you really want to know more about its capability, but this is some kind of what it does. And this is something that Power Automate really stands out to as well. So you won't find this with Logic Apps or a Durable Class Framework. So this really sits on top of Power Automate, similar to some of the flows when it comes to human interaction and kind of stuff. Then again, Power Automate is really fit for purpose. Or when it comes, for instance, to expense reports or invoices that need to be run through cognitive service for optical character recognition to extract the amounts, then again, Power Automate together with AI Builder is a really good combination. Now let's look at something more like a use case for Logic Apps. So Logic Apps, you can trigger those with a timer trigger, and then it will, for instance, we'll go to open exchange rate, pull some of the information on an hourly basis. There's a date time, or there's an epoch value, and change it to date time. So communicate with a function, push that information to a queue where another Logic App will pick it up and it will push it into Cosmos DB. So this is kind of a process you can also run. And I'll have a use case as well for this. So yeah, you build this up again, open the designer, add triggers and actions, and then basically trigger your process. And with regards to this more use case where, and I talked about Logic Apps earlier, with enterprise integration from a hybrid perspective, and this is kind of a little bit of a use case. It's from Udea, which is a distributor of Whole Foods in the Netherlands, or Natural Foods. They do all kind of distribution, they do payrolling, and all this operational financial data needs to go into Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. So what BizTalk will do is just connectivity with the on-prem systems and then push the data out to a Logic App through HTTPS. The Logic App will communicate with a recurring integration, so the payload will be handed over to Dynamics 365. It's not event-driven yet to say, hey, I'm done. So basically, an ID comes back, at least a job ID. The job ID is being pushed to a queue. Then there's another Logic App listening to it. It will use that, job ID to say, hey, are you done? And it will do it in a certain time frame. And then it's done. So you see there's two Logic App interacting with Dynamics 365. So this is a completely integration type of scenario. You also see some of the arrows pointing to a queue which basically gets all the logging type of match. So some of the metadata is being pushed from all this logic app and BizTalk server on top of on a queue, and then you get this logic app on the background ingesting those and pushing them to a Cosmos DB, which is indexed, and then subsequently some of the people that want to moderate this process can have a look into it. You even see AZ copies, so some of the original files are being pushed to storage. There's a function in front of it, so you can even get the original files which are tied to the integration here as well. So just to show you where a scenario where you can find those logic apps into, so really more type of integration scenarios, different from the something I showed you previously with Power Automate. But this is a process of getting your financial data centralized into Dynamics 365. Similarly, I could have this process in durable functions. So we could kick off an orchestration client, which subsequently kicks off an orchestration function and then just gets the rates, converts, the timestamp from epoch to a date time, and then store it in the database. So I can do something similar, which I just showed you, but then using the durable functions. So I will go demonstrate, the logic app and the that solution, at least together with what I've built in durable functions. So the solution of ingesting the data and eventually get it into Cosmos DB, that's within this Azure resource group. So some of the components in there. Let me just focus on what's being built for get the currency data, but also insert. So this is the logic app designer, and it will render a bit. This might take a little bit of time, where you can see those steps. So recurrence, scope within is basically calling out to open exchange rate. So it's this API. This is a public free API for just USD. It will parse, basically tokenize the response, push this to a function, at least the timestamp, and then add the timestamps date time field to the as a property to the response JSON, and then push that to a queue, and then subsequently the other one picks it up, and I can show you quickly how that flow will looks like. There's also a couple of steps. Peak log, and then the scope here, basically parse it, compose, add an ID to it, so you can do create, update document into Cosmos DB. I already talked about a little bit about this as well. So with the logic app, you also have a code behind, and that's that markup language basically, and it shows like this, and that's the inverted graph. It's basically the whole. So here you see the trigger, and then followed by all the steps behind it, etc. So that's the whole complete markup visual designer. If I go to this one again, let's just quickly look at a run, which I briefly mentioned as well. So I could say, okay, resubmit, but I also can look into some of the details. You can, look at each of these steps. You can see the output here. That's the response. You can see, okay, I'm providing this date time, and then, or at least epoch value, and then I'm getting this back, etc. Similarly, I can do this with a durable function. So here's kind of the code. Run the orchestrator, which calls these activity functions. So do the ingestion, do the timestamp conversion, and the exchange rate. So I can run this. So I offer this. I've done it in C#. Then it will start up my local function runtime. That's also tied with the local Azure emulator. Have to wait for a little bit, so it will spin up. This takes a little bit of time, and then it will come up, configuration, it will load some of the functions. So there's a client, there's an orchestrator, there's 3 activities, so that's 5 in total, as you can see here. Then it will provide me an endpoint, a local endpoint, which I could call through Postman. Wait a second more, and it's ready to go. So I could call it out. So I will call this. I will switch back to my runtime so you can see the activity. So it's sending that request, or at least kicks off that process of getting the exchange rate, etc. It's a little bit of latency locally as well, I see. Okay, you can do it. It's a little bit lagging. Sorry about that. So fingers crossed. Come on, you can do it. And what would happen is it would return some of the URLs you see here. I'm just canceling the request. It takes a bit too long. I'm not sure why. There's some of these like management API calls you could do. So I mentioned this with the durable transfer. And this is those management APIs around, which you can click, and then you can get the status. Let's see if this one responds. I'm uncertain if it will do it. And then it will return it will query basically the durable transfer and asking, hey, you know, where are you at this moment? Unfortunately, it's stuck and it doesn't really help me. So I have to cancel it. So sorry about that, but you know, usually this, you know, this works. Okay. Let's return to the slides. So you've seen the process of ingesting data and push it into Cosmos DB with logic apps, but you can do something similar with durable task framework. And a durable task framework or durable function are really suitable for, you know, automation and then background processes. So this is one of the use cases I got from Microsoft. So this is the same Chris Gillum from the Azure Functions team who talked about this. So and this for Fujifilm. So basically they ingest a lot of the pictures, which kicks off one of the functions, which then subsequently sends out multiple, or at least kicks off 2 activity functions, one leveraging the Face API, the other one doing some classifications on data, and then some exploration and pushing those results out to a Cosmos DB database. So they can, you know, process tons and tons of image, leverage the Azure compute, and then really reduce processing time in general because of the infrastructure you can hook under, you know, your durable functions. So, and there's even URL where you can read more about this story as well. Okay. So, use cases, scenarios, IDEs, what you can work. How about monitoring, reporting, and governance a little bit? So, with the Power Platform, it's all centralized with what's called a Power Platform Admin Center. So it gives you some insights, track health. You can even personalize some of the dashboards. So this is completely integrated, which you can use. So it's kind of, you know, one tool where you can do a lot of the insights, operations, etc. So you can really manage your flows directly this way. When it comes to logic apps and functions, and where you basically have those in the Azure on the Azure platform, then you got, you know, multiple tools basically. So it's a myriad of tools where you got the Azure Monitor, Advisor, and Cost Management. And within Azure Monitor, you get application insights. So there's all ways of looking at your application performance, usage, and even the cost, etc. But it's multiple tools you need to use versus more one of the tools. So that's briefly on that. Okay, so I talked individually about 3 of these technologies, but how are these like tied in together? How are these, you know, how does it all bring together if you look at this? Because you get, you know, you got multiple options with regards to automation, but this kind of, you know, tells a story. This picture is where you got Power Automate on top of Logic Apps, and then Logic Apps can tap into Azure Functions, or a function can even call a Logic App, or you can even build Azure Functions and push those into Power Automate itself. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So you can create a function and expose your endpoint of your function towards Power Automate, where you can leverage it, basically. Something similar you can also do with Logic Apps. But you can also, if you build a Power Automate, but you want a little bit more control, export those flows to Visual Studio, and then start building up or offering your Power Automate more as a Logic app, and then extend it basically and have it deployed on Azure itself. You can also create a function and then consume that function in a Logic app, which I briefly showed you also in the demo. So that's open. So that you can see a little bit how these things are, technologies are a little bit tied into, but that's just functions. I'm not talking about durable functions, just function itself. Bringing these together or looking at those technologies, this is kind of another scenario which Premier Field Engineer from Microsoft showed us 2 or 3 years ago at a certain event. And this is where when cars pass a toll booth on a toll road, their picture being taken as fact, okay, they need to pay eventually because they run over the toll road. And basically, Microsoft built in a solution or this scenario where, those vehicle photos are being captured. And that raises something like what's called an event, because Azure Event Grid, which is a centralized service that can manage your events, basically gets those Bob-created events. And it's like, hey, okay, I'll push that event, or at least I have one of the functions which subscribes in those events and basically does with OCR, get the license plates, push that information, kicks off other functions, which subsequently push that in the Cosmos DB, get another function looking up those license plates, store that for export, but then again, also to look up, if the customer has, is already familiar, so they can invoice him through his credit card. If not, they can send the bill to his house saying, hey, you got to pay because you were on that toll road. But you see a little bit how functions and, even a Logic app are married into kind of this, service type of solution. Okay, before I'll get to my takeaways, I'm still doing good on time. Okay, what do analysts say? Because one way is, these all three are pretty serious technologies. Why? Because if you look at low code, and this is where the Power Platform, with Power Automate stands in, it's like they have some competitors within Salesforce, but also OutSense and Mendix, but still they're a leader in that quadrant as well. So it's pretty serious technology. It's widely adopted. There's a lot of big customers like Chevron and Coca-Cola are leveraging, Power Automate. So it stands out there, and it's a pretty serious technology by itself. And similarly accounts for the fact that even Forrester, that's another of those analyst bureaus, says the same thing and also identifies the low-code offering of Microsoft, the Power Platform, in this case, Automate, as one of the leaders as well. And then if you look at serverless Logic app integration as a platform kind of thing, then again, you see Microsoft as one of the leaders also in the Gartner quadrant as well. Logic apps have been GA'd for a couple of years now and also got a wide adoption in all kinds of scenarios. So again, also a serious technology. Okay, kind of the key takeaways, I would say, okay, there's multiple ways of building workflow or creating a workflow solution you can host up in the cloud, or at least in Microsoft Cloud or Azure, right? I want to point and stress out these are not competing technologies. So I think with one of the previous slide where you can see how these workflow kind of technologies relate to each other, they really can enhance themselves. So you don't have to build everything up in Automate or Logic Apps or Azure. I would say Automate is where it resides within the office space and some of the automations there, and with RPA and kind of stuff. Logic App, I would say, hey, definitely suitable for all kinds of integration scenarios, EDI, B2B even, if you tie it in with the integration account. And when you look at Azure Durable Functions, really suitable for heavy-duty type of background type of processes. So like I'm pointing out, you have to choose one of these workflow technologies based on your use case type of scenarios. And I pointed out 1 or 2 of those as well. Like I said, they're mature leading technologies. So it's not like these are in preview. These are already established technologies, and they're of like wide adoption, and they've been out there already for quite some time. There's some good innovation going on within the Power Platform, especially with the RPA capability and Power Automate. So you see a lot of investment in that area too, to make it a full-grown technology you can leverage, depending on your scenarios, let's say. The other thing I find is that, with regards to learning these type of technologies, it's a pretty moderate learning curve. It's not too hard. If you're familiar with coding and stuff, then durable task framework is easy to understand and how it works and how you can build those up, similar to Power Automate or Logic Apps. Which brings me basically to the end. So how do you onboard, your citizen developer if you're not really a coder, but you like to leverage these tools, or if you're a developer? So Power Automate, there's a community, there's a blog, there's YouTube channels, there's a lot of videos out there. There's also a product rep. So, once you get your slides, hands on these slides, you can click on those links if you're interested in that part of technology, on building those up. Similar to Logic App, there's blog, YouTube channel, there's an integration user group content. There's also a roadmap available. So something interesting there as well. And even if it comes to durable functions, again, there's blog channels, GitHub repository where you can find lots of samples, user group content. So same story. So there's a lot of content available for each of these workflow technologies. So with that, I'd like to thank you for attending this virtual session. The first one was streaming technology and stuff, but I hope I was able to convey the message about building up those workflows, how this developer experience is, and all kinds of stuff. So thank you. Which brings me back to Rasmus for questions.
Hey, Stefan, thank you so much for the presentation. Really, really appreciate it. I enjoyed it for sure. And we had a good number and stable number of watches here. So thank you so much. Oh, there you are. We can see you now.
Yeah. I chose to now make myself visible. Yes. COVID beard.
That's good. So for the audience there, we have some things we want to share here. So hang on for a second. But we also want to give the audience an opportunity to ask questions. Yeah. And we can bring them up on screen here for Stefan to read out. So yes. So please use the comment window on the channel you're watching. I think most of you are on YouTube. We are also on Twitch, I should say, just because we can, I would say. So go ahead, type in your questions here. First of all, Rasmus is thanking you for the presentation.
Thank you.
So
yes,
absolutely awesome stuff. And fresh off the press, you said you created the content just now.
Yeah. Well, after being showing some content, or at least developments are in the Power Automate Integrate, which is integration conference hosted by Kovi, which is Sarvana, which had some of the stuff around Logic Apps, functions, and also Power Automate. So I kind of thought, why don't I bring these together and talk about these technologies and what you could use for what type of scenario. In general, you can automate your process in the cloud, but what would you choose?
Yeah. So we have a question from Anders here. I'm just going to bring it up on screen and get to read it out.
Any word on when durable functions will support Python? I think there are some developments in that way that they try to bring on this language. I'm not sure. I know that from version 1 to 2, they kind of taken the language part of the functions from function itself to give the more extensibility, support more languages, but I'm not sure when it will support the durable function itself. So,
yeah. Also, know from my work,
would give an answer to that. So,
yeah, thank you. From my work, we also experiment a lot with the next wave of languages on functions. I know we also have Java running on functions now, which is interesting as well. So no doubt that this technology will develop as well.
Well, I can imagine Python because it's pretty good language when it comes to machine learning type of scenarios. So,
and I think this was just a thank you for the presentation from Anders as well. So just forward it there. From your world, Stefan, you see a lot of customers. I am sure. So what's the appetite to move towards these serverless solutions and also no-code or low-code solutions?
Well, I normally, because I work for an integrator, right? At least coded from back in the day, started out as a firm that focused heavily on BizTalk server, and of course now embraced IoT the cloud and all kinds of stuff. So we see a lot of uptake in logic apps predominantly. Sometimes a little bit functions. We're not that versed in the Power Platform, but that's because you see the Power Platform more attached to companies, ISVs that work a lot, or at least consultancy firms that do a lot with the dynamics itself.
Okay.
So we deal less with the Power Platform by itself because that's more a trade. You'll find a lot with the ISVs that, do consultancy around Dynamics CRM and Dynamics Finance and Operations and some of the other flavors they have for Dynamics. So,
okay, interesting. We have for sure featured a lot of sessions on functions and serverless over the. Well, we haven't been that active the last couple of months, but of course, before the entire lockdown, we had quite an appetite for this. So let me remind the viewers, please do this survey. We ask, of course, how did you enjoy today, but also what kind of topics you would see here over the summer as well. So please consider just taking 30 seconds to do the survey and give us a taste of what you would like to see, what kind of speakers you would like to see here. So we will pause for the summer break during July. It's very slow going here in Denmark for sure, as that's where we primarily have our vacation. But we are planning the next series of streams. So please put that in. You can also use the comment field. That's good. So we capture your feedback there. Okay, so let me just check if there came another question in here. Okay, cool. So let me also remind the audience that we have a few other sessions planned. Here we go. Let me just bring them up here. So next week we have 2 sessions. We have a session with external collaborations with Azure Active Directory. A good friend of mine comes here and presents same format as today. And we also have Eldad next week talking about API management, something that is a hot topic, I would say, in many organizations. As we
definitely true. In front of the logic apps to secure them, we leverage a lot of the API management as well. It's a really good session because it really dives into API management by itself. So. Yeah,
absolutely. There's one more question here for you, Stefan. Let me just put it on the screen.
Does Power Automate easily plug into SAP, SQL, and other line of business system? Actually, it does, because there's quite some connectors available for those systems. Probably SAP, could be SAP HANA, SQL. Potentially, you can tie into it using the application gateway. So that's what I talked about. Is this agent you install on your machine, which basically then set up the Azure relay. So that's that outbound connection. They basically provide that connectivity of your cloud with your on-prem system.
Cool, great. And Francois, great question. Thank you.
Definitely a great question.
Shout out from Axel. Great demo.
Yeah, it didn't work though, because
that's how. But listen, you didn't sacrifice a virtual machine to the demo gods, so.
No, but usually it should. It completely froze on me, because before I tried it out and it kind of worked. Maybe I should have disconnected that session and kept it open, because basically then you can see really the power of
that's how
durable function. Right? That management API capability. That's pretty interesting. So
cool. One more question from Anders here.
Does Logic App have connects for Salesforce? Yes, it does. So it has direct, connectors. There's a connector for the Salesforce. So basically, all these connectors, you can consume those in your Logic App Designer, right? So you click on one of those connectors, and then it will show you a different set of operations you can perform on that, in this case, Salesforce. So that's possible. And there's another thing to it, because I think this is a great question, actually. Let's say there's a certain capability not available in the, connector, because it's kind of an encapsulation of an API which does all kinds of operation Salesforce. Then you can also expose your own API, which is something on Salesforce, for instance, and then consume that one using a custom, what's called a custom connector. And basically what a custom connector does, it consumes that, let's say open API definition or Swagger, if you expose it that way with your API, and then you can consume that in your Logic app. So
excellent. Thanks a lot, Stefan. And again, I want to thank you for spending an hour with us here, and of course, the preparation for it. So really appreciate it. I also promised to give time to Sherry. Sherry, can you join us here, please? There you are. Don't forget you're muted, okay? So Sherry's from Microsoft. Sherry, would you mind just introducing yourself briefly?
Hi, yes, sure. My name is Sherry Liz, and I'm working as developer engagement lead at Microsoft. I'm based in Copenhagen. And super happy to be here.
Thank you. So Sherry, we have a couple of minutes left. I know you wanted to introduce something awesome for the community, so please go ahead.
Yes, definitely. I'm going to be super quick. Can you all see my screen? Okay. So what we started at Microsoft in my team is called Azure Heroes Program, where we are rewarding all the contribution to the community. We have multiple different digital badges that they are based on blockchain, and you can earn these badges by doing different community activities. And then the reason behind it is that to motivate you to and empower you to do more. And thank you for all the contribution to the communities. So as I'm not going through to the whole type of badges that we have, because you can go to our website and check all of them out. But as for today, all of you are going to get a special Summer Learner Edition badge. And this learner badge goes to everyone who are spending some time by learning something about Azure, especially during the summer in this nice weather. Thank you to all of you that you are choosing to come to this session and learn from Stefan instead of going out and enjoying the sun. So if you scan this QR code, you all need to install an wallet, which is called Engine Wallet, and then get this digital badge. And then later, and you can collect more of these badges. And later on, you can actually exchange these badges with an actual swag. So you need to collect it as many as you can by going to the different events. And if you want to learn more about Azure Heroes Program, you can go to aka.ms/azure.heroes and see that how you can nominate yourself for the different type of badges that we have. Because Summer Learner Badge is one of the badges that we have, but we have way more. You can nominate yourself or a community friend to get different type of badges. So I know you all want to go out and enjoy the sun. So we are going to, I'm pretty sure that we posted the link here, how to get it. But I'm pretty sure that Rasmus can also send it to the meetup to you. And if you are on Twitter, follow MSFDK, which is the Microsoft channel for the developers from Denmark, where we are sharing a lot of different resources and also upcoming events that we have. And also the awesome Twitter handle from this user group. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sherry. Much appreciated. And we have one last surprise for those who made it this far. I'm just going to invite Stefan back to the stream. There we go. The three of us is here. So Microsoft is also sponsoring a swag box, I think it's called. It's almost like a lunchbox, but just with swag inside. So Stefan, I'm going to put you on the spot here and pick your favorite question of this afternoon, and we will grant the swag box to this person, and then we'll sort out the logistics afterwards. So which one was your favorite question?
No, I think I think the one on the Salesforce connector was a pretty good one actually, because.
All right, let me just find it just to confirm with Python. There we go. Let me just show it here. This one, right?
Yeah.
So Anders,
Logic app Salesforce, yeah.
Yeah. Anders, if you're still on the stream, find me on the internet. Yeah, find me on the internet, Twitter, on the community page for the meetup, whatever. Ping me there, and we will make sure we sort sending you a swag box with appropriate social distancing. So with that, thank you so much for tuning in. Stefan, thank you so much for spending time.
Thank you.
Thanks for sponsoring. And for those of you listening in, thanks for spending an hour with us. And don't forget to complete the survey, please. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.